Hi, everyone. Just give folks a few minutes to log in. Hey, Allison.
Hey.
Hi, Mary Alice. I'm just giving folks a couple more minutes. Okay, we should be having Ron and Michelle. We just got off the meeting with them. Was Tessie on earlier today?
Yes, she was.
There she is, okay.
And we have one person in room 405 attending.
Yes, that's correct.
Member of the public.
Yeah.
Great. Terrific.
Does anybody know if Gordon and Mike are joining today?
I think Gordon is traveling.
Okay, Gordon's traveling. Okay. Dawn said she's going to be about 15 minutes late. So I think we have everyone then. You can go ahead and get started. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's Tuesday, November 1st. It's 1:33 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name's Onona Thone. I'm chair of the council. No one is in the room with me. Robin, you're up next. You're on mute.
Sorry, my name is Robin Kay. I live on the island of Lanai, and I'm by myself.
Thank you. I was going to say Mary, but she just stepped away. Okay, Roy, go ahead.
No, I just
there
rolled
you are.
around. Hi, Mary Bejere from Hawaii Island. There's nobody in the room with me.
Thank you. Roy?
Hi, Roy Abe, member from Oahu. No one's here with me.
Thank you. Steph?
Aloha everyone, Steph Dunbar-Coe, and I am alone.
Thank you. Maka'ala?
Maka'ala Kamwana, and I'm from where you see behind me, and I am alone.
Thank you. Rachel?
My name is Rachel Sprague. I live on the island of Lanai, and I am here by myself.
Thank you. Tessie?
Tessie Kinnaman, Kauai, all alone.
Thank you. Michelle?
Michelle Lefebvre, Hawaii Island.
Thanks, Michelle.
I'm alone.
Ron?
Jody, when I'm mute. Thank you. Hey, this is Ron Terry on the Big Island, solo.
Thank you. Mahina?
Aloha, I'm Mahina Tudor on Oahu, and I'm by myself.
Thanks, Mahina. Okay, Gordon?
Good afternoon. Sorry. Gordon Scruton from Oahu, currently on Kauai.
All right. Thanks, Gordon. Welcome. Okay, Mary Alice?
Mary Alice Evans, staff.
Thank you. And Les?
Segundo, I'm here in 405, and we have a member of the public with us here.
Thank you. And Ron, while you're there, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Ronald Sato with HHF Planners, here for HPHA on their agenda item.
Thank you. Okay, Jody.
Good afternoon, Jody Yee, Deputy Attorney General.
Thank you. And Allison Cotto.
Hi, Allison Cotto. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you, Deputy Attorney General. I'll be starting representing OPSD on the 7th, including EAC. Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Allison. All right, Dean, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself for the record.
Aloha, Dean Watasi. I'm with HHFDC. Thank you.
Thank you. And Randy Chu.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Randy Chu, HHFDC.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today. All right, so Mary Alice, I'll go ahead and start off with you if you want to go ahead and give us the OPSD Director's Report.
The House Resolution 82 Task Force has met 3 times. The group has generated a list of potential user-friendly updates to the Environmental Review Program's website. And the next step is to get order of magnitude cost estimates for those potential upgrades. So we've reached out to 2 vendors, not to get a quote, because this is only for order of magnitude cost estimates that we will then put into the report to the legislature for their consideration. And we will be scheduling discussions with them to get an idea of what the range of cost might be. So that will allow us to complete the draft report, which we will then provide to the chair for whether she wants to circulate it to the members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mary Alice. Does anybody have any questions for Mary Alice on the House Resolution 82 Task Force? Oh, go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, your last comment, Mary Alice, in terms of passing it through Onauna and then at her discussion up to us, is there a reason why we wouldn't see it as a normal part of the flow?
No reason at all, just that normally your chair would be the one to make the distribution.
I'm sorry.
No, I for one would like to see the recommended changes.
Yeah, we're happy to share that with the council. All right, Robin, are you anticipating suggesting further changes before? No, okay, just want to see what's going to the ledge, basically. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I use that site a lot, and I you know, being relatively incompetent, I would be a good judge of its facility, and so I just like to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, underestimate yourself. But yeah, happy to pass that along to, well, I'll probably actually ask Les to do the distribution to the council members, consistent with what we've previously done.
Robin, did you participate in the last task force meeting that where the draft was report was sent out? Oh, okay. So there is a draft report that summarizes the first 2 meetings of that task force that was then circulated at the 3rd meeting. But it doesn't have cost estimates, which was one of the requests from the legislature. So it just, at this point, that isn't, it's not in its, final draft form yet, simply because that was a key part of what they might need to consider.
Given that we have no budget, I'm really not concerned with the financial components of it. I just want to see what it's going to be like to use. You're not taking money away from us, so go at it, have it.
Well, without a legislative appropriation, all of the ideas would be airware. So you got to have the cost estimates in there.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
Sure.
All right, any other questions from council members on this agenda item? Or members of the public, any questions or comments? Well, if not, thank you very much, Mary Alice, for that update. Anything else to report to us? Legislative packages, anything? Yeah.
Let's see, yes. The administration is starting to prepare a transition briefing binder for the next administration, and that will include descriptions of our boards, along with the members on the boards. Now, this is not specific to the Environmental Advisory Council. It's broad across all of the executive branches, departments, divisions, attached agencies, and boards. But we will be updating information, existing information, into that briefing binder collation that will then go to the transition team for the new governor after the election.
Is there anything that you need from us on that?
We just got this information this morning in the DBED managers meeting. So I think yes, but I can't be specific about it just now. It wouldn't be new information. It would be existing documents that we already have.
Well, we'll stand by if there's anything that you need from us, then
Thank you.
let us know.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Les, can you let Dawn in? She's in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And anything else, Mary Alice, or any other questions for her? All right. Thank you and welcome, Dawn. All right. So Ron, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for our next agenda item, which is the exemption committee update.
Thank you. Yes, the exemption committee met earlier today at 12:30. We had 2 items on our agenda, which should be on your agenda too. I'll take them up in the order we got them. The Hawaii Housing and Finance Development Corporation, or HHFDC, had their list published for public comment in September. We had 15 days plus for anybody to comment on the list. We didn't get any comments. But we considered the list again today, and our committee looked at a few items that we thought should be amended from what the list that you have in front of you, if you've got it open right now. So I'd like to go ahead and maybe deal with that. Maybe I'll ask Dean if he can come on board here and explain, maybe identify the paragraphs that are different and read them off. I was just able to open this thing, so.
Okay, and Ron, sorry, before you do that, I see we just had one more member of the public join, Chen KB, if you don't mind just introducing yourself for the record.
Chen, just a member of the public. I do not have.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. Do you mind just saying that a little bit clearer?
I will try. Chen, member of the public. This afternoon, my desktop does not have a camera.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ron, sorry about that. I'll hand that back to you.
Yeah, no problem. Dean, could you identify the area of the list that has changed and discuss how the wording has changed in response to our suggestions?
Sure. So this is regarding exemption type 6, which is demolition of structures, except those structures that are listed on the National Register or Hawaii Register of Historic Places. So part 1 actions, we just tweaked the language to make it a little bit more clear. So the language now reads, part 1 actions include structures that do not require further consideration. In addition, we made some tweaks to part 2 actions language, the language there. So it now states include structures that require further consideration because of their potential impacts to the surrounding community. So we removed that word non-significant. So hopefully that clears up the language, better.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah, and so if, for those of you who have the list in front of you, it's a very minor change. It doesn't substantively change anything. It removes the word non-significant because it doesn't really, it doesn't clear anything up, and it sort of confuses the issue. It deals with things that are on the Hawaii or national register. And so non-significant was, not really needed. And it makes a good distinction between what's part 1 actions and what's part 2 actions. Things that need a little more investigation they were always intended to be part 2. Things that don't require more investigation are part 1. So it's just a little different. If anybody wants further explanation, we can go into it if there's any questions. And this was, of course, in response to our questions that occurred at the meeting, and Dean was able to edit this on the fly. So I think the list is, well, just pretty darn perfect right now. So in my opinion, did a good job. So our approval, our recommendation to the council to concur with this list constitutes a motion that doesn't require a second. So the discussion is now open. If there's anybody who wants to discuss this.
Thanks very much, Ron. You may have said it in your intro and I missed it. I just wanted to confirm that when this list went out for public comment, were there public comments that were received on it?
There were no public comments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Les.
All right, any questions, comments, discussion from council members? Okay, and of course, members of the public, if you have any comments, excuse me, comments, you're welcome to please raise your hand and let me know. All right, seeing none. So again, I'll ask one more time, any discussion or comments from the council members? And if not, we do have a motion on the floor. And this is to concur with the HHFDC list as amended, as discussed by Ron and Dean. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and call for the vote then. All those in favor of concurring with this list, please raise your hand and keep it up. All right, let's see if we are, Mary, are you not voting on this? Okay, just checking. Okay, so we are unanimous. So I won't do an individual roll call. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, council, and thank you, Dean, for work on the list. So we will, at this point, what we do is the list that you sent will, let's see, this says, I think, does your list still say draft exemption list?
I removed that language.
Yeah, could you remove that and then send that to Les?
Okay.
Via the email that you and I have been using, and he will stamp it and put it on the website, and it'll be your official concurred list.
Thank you.
All right, one more time. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the agency. Sorry, Onauna, did you?
One more question. When Les puts the stamp on it, will it have the concurrence date, or do you want Dean to add that with today's date?
I'll let Les answer that.
That's up to you, Dean. If you can put it on, I appreciate it.
Okay, I'll put on like a statement below the title then, like a concurrent date.
Yeah, just put concurrence date and today's date, 11/1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that, and I'll amend the list and send it back to you, Les.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Randy.
Great. Okay, now we have a second item on the agenda, and that's the list from the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. And this list is being recommended our committee recommended it, big picture, we recommended it for the council to release for public comment. And we had some comments. We had a number of comments. They were, all minor, some of them almost trivial, but they're important because they make the list, better. And we don't want any errors or things in there. So we got what we feel is pretty close. And we provided these to the agency representative, Hakeem Wansafi, who's not here at this meeting, but he was here for our exemption committee meeting, and to Ron Sato, who is with us today and live in the ERP room. He is our really special guest here. And so, Ron, I'll ask you to make a statement.
Sure. Again, Ronald Sato with the HHF planners here for HPHA. Their last exemption list was in 1989. So they're, it's a good time for them to update the list, and we just helped them with updating the list with the new rules. We did get comments from the committee, good comments. I'll have those changes all ready for the final. And otherwise, I'm just here to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you, Ron. Are there any questions by our council members for Ron? Okay. And again, we made some comments, and I know Ron wrote every single one of them down, has already kind of decided what he thinks he's going to do about it. But we're going to provide him, Onauna, I think, is going to provide him. You can do that? Can you do that, Onauna?
Yeah, did you send me the Word document? I do have some, track changes and whatnot that I'll submit as comments during the public.
Yeah. Ronald, can we have you send Les the Word document of exactly what you sent us?
Yes, I have the Word document, Ron.
Do you have the one that's highlighted with what we talked about, or?
I have both.
Okay, great. Yeah, send the one that's not highlighted.
Okay.
And to me, as the committee chair, I'm going to send this to Onauna, or you can just copy us, both of us.
Okay.
He's got some comments. It's going to make it a little easier. So we do have comments, but our committee felt that the comments were not of the nature or intensity that it required asking them to come back with a new list. It was just kind of minor things. We do encourage everybody on the council to read these lists when they come to you. This is your opportunity to make sure that agencies are exempting actions properly as you think. So, even if you're not on our committee, you're welcome to make comments. We're going to make some comments. The other members of the public and other agencies are going to have the opportunity to make the comments. When they're all done, Ron and the agency are going to consider them, and I know they're definitely going to come back with a slightly revised list. Ron's already told me that. He's let it slip.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And then our committee is going to consider it again, and for consideration of concurrence. But first, this is the process. Get it out there for public comment. Any questions about the process or the list itself or anything else? Well, again, our motion, our approval was constitutes a motion and a second for the purposes of this committee. So I'll turn it over to Onauna now.
Thanks very much, Ron. Any discussion or questions from council members and members of the public on this agenda item? All right, hearing none, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Again, it's for this list, the HPHA Public Housing Authority list to be published in the environmental notice for 15 days for public comment. All those in favor, please raise your hand and keep it up. Do we have everyone? Okay, we do have everybody. It is unanimous with all the members present, so I will not do an individual roll call. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That that concludes the report of the exemption committee.
Community meeting.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you to both rounds. All right, so Mary, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you now for the INO update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I wanted to give kudos to the Environmental Council for and our staff for the work they do in archiving. I received a call from someone who had recently changed jobs, and now one of her responsibilities is to access EAs and EISs and pull out certain information, and she wasn't really sure how. I assured her that we had a great archive library, and if she needed help, she could contact Les. She found what she needed. She wanted to make sure she'd found what she needed, so she contacted Les, and he gave her a really quick tutorial that she actually documented and shared with her fellow staff on how to do things. And so I just want hats off to Les. Thank you very much for helping people do their job. That's the way, that's our mission, right?
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
So INO met this morning. We approved our minutes of the July 5th meeting. So refresh my memory. I know I put that on the agenda for approval at our next meeting, or do we have the full council approve it now?
Your minutes?
The minutes from the July 5th meeting.
No, the committee minutes are just approved by the committee.
Cool. All righty. Moving on. Our next item on our agenda was to finish up some of the work, the preparatory work on our forum in January. At the meeting we had in person, we talked about this being on January 5th. That is not accurate. We will be doing it on January 11th. A key contributor on our panel will not be available on the 5th, so we moved it to the 11th. Invitations have gone out to slightly more than sufficient persons to serve on the panel. Just to Wayne Tanaka from the Sierra Club, either Les or Tom from the EAC, Mahina to speak from the Native Hawaiian law standpoint, or if she doesn't want to do it, would she please recruit someone else that would give us that perspective, and to David Arakawa at LERF. We discussed this morning, our name for this is going to be the clearing the hurdles of an EIS. And our instructions to the panel will be the who, what, why of doing that. We'd really love to just call it EIS for dummies, but we felt that it wasn't appropriate for a state agency to use the word dummy in any kind of a title. So we didn't want to run the risk of insulting anybody. And so we're moving along with that. We're not going to do a big fancy flyer like we've done in the past. It seems to it creates too much work with very little rate of return. And so we'll be counting on all of you. Once we get the information confirmed, we will do a simple flyer that you can then send to all of your constituents. And we'll be asking for you to help us with that, spreading of the word. The next item on our agenda is our elevator speeches. I know you all spent days and hours just studying all of these elevator speeches. INO thought that it might be helpful if we gave you a recommendation and a rationale behind it, and you can certainly shoot us down. This is all open for discussion. We felt that, and I'm looking at the potential elevator speech document that was circulated, it should have 8 numerical paragraphs, and that we felt that the 8th one was the simplest, the most brief, and that would be most appropriate in just explaining what the EAC did, particularly to someone who is just asking, what's that? Why do you do it? But then we also felt that the remaining 7 also contained pertinent information, and that the members of this body should retain this document and possibly cull from those other 7 when they're doing things like drafting testimony or writing an explanation for work that they're doing within their respective committee. We didn't see anything really wrong with any of the elevator speeches, and we turn that over to this body to either bless or change our minds. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mary, and to INO. Do we have any comments on the elevator speeches? Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, Mary, thank you for your persistence in dealing with all of this. Well done. My personal preference is exactly where your guys were, so I'm really pleased with number 8. I think it's the least bureaucratic and the most direct to the point. So well done. My question is to the committee. Have you discussed how to use it? Where it would be best positioned, how to get it out to the public? Obviously, you remember that this came about because the survey showed that people did not, including important constituents for us, had no idea what we were doing and assumed that we were, reviewing EISs and like that. So I'm just wondering if the INO has begun the discussion of how to use this well-crafted elevator speech.
We did not have a discussion on any sort of PR communication. We felt more that we were addressing our individual members, and when they're asked, why are you volunteering? What are you doing? As well as the people, in the survey, when they said, well, what do you do? We thought that this was something simple enough to provide. I don't know if I don't know, Robin, if we go back to all those people that took the survey and said, hey, thanks for your comments, guys, this is what we come up with.
Well, we had talked about that. Unfortunately, I checked with the survey people, and because of their promise of anonymity, they do not have the
who
list.
they are.
But I think, and I'll reference it later because we talked about it in the Strategic Planning Committee, as you'll remember. But I don't know who leads this or not. I'd leave that up to you. But I think we ought to do some brainstorming about how best to utilize this information, because it really clearly was directed at communicating our raison d'etre, if you will, to a broad constituency. And, Jody indicated with some research that we can accept outside help, professional help in for example, doing a PSA. So I think we while we can't spend $1 billion and we haven't settled, what we're going to do, I think there needs to be some discussion about what's the best way to get this message out. And Onana, maybe you can think how you want to have that discussion, whether it's the whole council or a pig or you do it yourself, or we give it back to INO. But at some point, it'd be a shame to just leave it on a piece of paper.
No, I agree. And go ahead, Mary Alice.
I'm looking at the 8 options, and because we have been directed to upload information on our 8 boards into the new administration's transition book, I'm wondering which one of these you might want me to include as a short description of this board for the next administration.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like the INO recommendation is number 8. Sorry. Okay, Steph, go ahead.
That seems a little brief, actually.
Oh, it's brief, and sorry if I can jump. I think we're still missing the mark here because we're not talking about the things we actually do. I like it as a start, but again, I think we mentioned this in the past. A lot of what we do more on a monthly basis, okay, through the annual reports, we may report on, the status of the state's environmental goals, but we're kind of doing that. We're mostly helping with rules, helping with exemption lists, doing the forms, and I think we got to incorporate those kind of things. So I think it's a start, but we do need to expand on that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Steph, and then I saw Dawn and then Makala.
Yeah, just want to kudos. I know this is never easy, right? Other people have communications and media departments who do this. So thank you for biting this off. I like 8. I like its simplicity. I agree with Onana that it doesn't quite capture, I think, the nuts and bolts of some of what we do. So I think that generalized sort of broadness of it is great initially, and perhaps a sentence or 2 getting into the actual daily activities that we have. And then I had a question, Mary or someone else on the committee, if you could share what you mean by monitor Hawaii's environmental properties.
I'm only going to be able to speak for myself. We did not delve into that for definition purposes, but to me, it speaks to the fact that our responsibility is to make sure that Hawaii, the government of Hawaii wanted to be sure they were tracking what was going on environmentally. And so that's what it says to me, you know, through the process of agencies getting EISs or exemptions from the same, you know, that's what it speaks to me about.
Does property here mean, you know, what is the definition? Does that mean like characteristic or?
So if I could just cut in just a little bit. So what I think Mary did maybe not also mention is, so, you know, if we're just standing in an elevator or talking to someone, number 8 was probably the easiest, but that doesn't mean that that is all encompassing for a letterhead or summary or public outreach. So I think that's why there's just more discussion. So I just wanted to kind of throw it in there that number 8 wasn't it completely.
Thanks, Don. Okay, Maka'ala.
Yeah, as the author of number 8, I will tell you what I meant. I meant properties / aspect components, not land properties as in parcels. So Mary got it. I think we were asked to write an elevator speech. This is what I can remember to say for consistency. This is appropriate to say in an elevator. Clearly, an elevator speech is intended by its nature to elicit a continued conversation. Mary Alice, for the purpose of the binder for the next administration, personally, I would recommend number 7. And I don't see that number 8 might not be an intro to number 7, but in trusting you fiddling with that, I completely concur. That binder requires, you know, at least number 7. And number 7 is pretty thorough. It's just more than I can remember in an elevator, and I'm looking at 34 floors. I think there might be a better word than properties. I mean, we could say things, you know, environmental qualities, environmental something. I'm not wedded to this thing, except in its brevity, because I've been asked to do this many times in my life, and I've actually tried to practice it, and it is not easy to say. So that's all I was going for, was what I thought I could remember.
What about goals, Maka'ala? Because I think that's more in line with.
That's fine. That's fine. I seriously I'm not wedded to that word. I was using it in the sense of aspect component. And it may be my old language. But Mary Alice, take a good look at number 7, and then I completely trust you and staff to stick in there what you need the new admin to know. We weren't thinking of that use when we wrote this, but I think we've at least given you good stuff, and I hope that all of these get used in some way. I can tell you right now that there are some members of the new administration, the potentially new administration with whom I've spoken, that have no clue. So I don't think you can tread too far astray from giving them some facts.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maka'ala. Any other comments on the elevator speeches or the proposed? I think I liked your idea, Maka'ala, of using number 7 as a foundation for what would be in the transition binder. I think even that one will maybe edit to add. And I'll tell you guys where I'm coming from. For me personally, I'm kind of always looking at the practical stuff. Like, I like the mission statements and all that because that's what's in the statute, but just the way I approach life generally, it's like I want to know what do we do, right? What's the product coming out of us? So that's why I was like mentioning the forums. That's something that's super helpful that I know you guys put a lot of effort into. to educating the community, agencies and whatnot. And then with the exemption list, I mean, a lot of time goes into that. And also us working on, you know, guidance and whatnot for the rules. So those are things I'd like to see. And I'm happy to take another stab and maybe now that we've looked at the several options, maybe editing, you know, 7 and 8 a little. Well, 8 will be the priority for the elevator speech. So if somebody does catch you in the elevator, right, and they ask you as a council member, what do we do? That's one way to communicate it. Robin, to your earlier question, you know, does this go back to INO? I'm also kind of thinking maybe INO and strategic planning work together as to, right, because as we go through our strategic planning and how we want to transition into the future or whatnot, part of that will be communicating, you know, what we do, right? So I think that INO and strategic planning will kind of tie into that. And maybe for INO, a way to use it is, you know, as an introduction to each of your forums, right? We are the Environmental Council. This is what we do. Just kind of, that's another marketing platform for us to do it that way. So those are some thoughts for consideration by the council. Any other comments, questions? So yeah, I'm happy to maybe, now that we've kind of settled on 7 and 8 for 2 purposes, maybe take a shot at doing another draft for our next meeting for consideration by the council. Does that sound like a way to move forward?
When is the binder due? When is the binder due?
The binder is due on November 10th.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the election is November 8th, as you all know.
Yeah.
And the transition team will be active on November 9th. And so the transition binder is due actually before then. So this is, and actually I must apologize. We just got this assignment this morning from DBED, and it was only when I started looking at the 8 options that I suddenly went, oh, good. Here's an opportunity to take something that has been given a fair amount of consideration by the council members and repurpose it. And I know that this was not what you were thinking of, but sometimes you have to be a little bit, you know, flexible and take advantage of what's available.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
I think that Mary Alice, you're correct that it wasn't why we wrote it, but your need for it is a perfect example why we need something to be documented, and that it should, you know, and I'm not sure what, you know, I'm probably going to set off all of Jody's alarms, but as far as I'm concerned, Mary Alice can take anything from this and use it right now. I think it's sufficient to represent what we do. So.
Yeah.
And just, I have one more agenda item on Anna, just so you don't think I'm done.
Go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
Did we complete this discussion sufficiently?
Let me just add one quick comment, Mary. Anna, I thought your generous offer to edit 7 and 8 together is, if you could do it in time for Mary Alice to have it. I don't like 7 by itself, and I don't think 8 is sufficient for her purposes. And I really like the way you've talked about what do we do from an action perspective. So adding those, if you can do them by her deadline, then I would certainly support that.
Okay. Yeah, if everybody's okay, and you know, I think in terms of it just being informational for the next administration, I mean, Mary Alice, I'll provide you some language, and OPSD can edit it as they want. I don't think we won't obviously have time to approve it by the council. It's not agendized for today, but it'll more be, you know, just a matter of fact, this is what we've kind of done over the last several years, and just so they understand. And, you know, really it'll kind of be in line with, you know, we'll get to this, but what's in the annual report, but just, you know, shorter, real quick, this is what this council does.
You've already prepared that report as the preliminary part of our strategic planning forum.
Right.
So you won't have to rewrite it. You may need to edit it a bit, but you were very good in laying out the things that we'd accomplished in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And that really clearly states what we do, what we've done.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that for, you know, see if we can get something to Mary Alice, and then I will also prep for the next meeting. Again, maybe just a little bit, editing 8 to kind of add a little bit more meat to it for this council's consideration. So, okay. Well, thank you everybody for working again on that. I know especially. Okay, and I'll turn it back to you, Mary, for your next agenda.
Our last item is number 5. It was brought to our attention a possibility of another forum. And so we discussed this a bit and fleshed it out. It's more around NEPA than it is around EISs, but it's again tutorial in nature. And since that one of the things that INO was tasked with, Maka'ala put it so succinctly probably over a year ago now, that there's just people out there that want information that we have and they don't know how to ask for it. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish with the January forum. And now we're going to schedule our February forum to, we're calling it Break the Code. It's going to look at how to work your way through some federal platforms that even as skilled people as that serve on this council could not get to the data that they knew was there. And so we're going to just do a down and dirty tutorial on how to navigate through some federal platforms. So
that's great. And Mary, may I recommend at the recent Hawaii Congress of Planning officials, Keha Watson Sproat did a breakout workshop on that sort of thing, and it was quite succinct. And quite clear and easy to understand.
Okay.
And she might at least be somebody you want to talk to. She's kind of hard to nail to the floor, but it'd be good to at least be. She could easily regurgitate what she just did. And it was a mixed audience, and everybody kind of sort of got it. She was focused on 106, but it could be on anything. Process is process.
Okay, thank you, Maka'ala.
Yeah, Maka'ala, thank you for that. So you know what, actually Mary's referring to me as trying to get through the federal platform and not being able to get through it. So US Fish and Wildlife, they're now requiring that you actually log into a federal database and then log into their PAC IIS system. And I couldn't figure out how to generate a Section 7 EA letter for the Endangered Species Act. So the US Fish and Wildlife actually signed on, and they had their IT person, and we actually navigated the whole website together and generated a letter. And that's basically their new MO, is what they're requiring everyone to do. So we talked about it, and the US Fish and Wildlife person's willing to help, as is the IT person. So we could kind of like help people, because I believe historic preservation and a lot of state agencies are now requiring this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dawn, for clarifying.
Yeah, Fish and Wildlife Service is requiring it for, I don't know how to say this nicely, for changing your shirt. I mean, it's insanity, but, and thank you for letting them know, Dawn, that you needed their IT person to guide you through the process. It is so not friendly, but you know, we each have to learn from each other. So thanks for being the starter in this case. And I will tell you, professional engineers and planners alike are stumbling through this website.
So we look at February to do that session. So.
And that does conclude the INO report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mary and INO. Looking forward to attending both of these forums. Thank you folks for working on that. That sounded really great and useful. All right, does anybody else have questions or comments for INO before we move on? Any members of the public, any comments? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So Steph, I'll go ahead and pass it to you for annual report. And, you know, thank you so much to you and the AR committee for getting that draft done on time.
You're very welcome. It was much smoother, I will say, this go around than in years past. So grateful for that, and grateful for grateful for the rest of the committee. But we were able to review and have a nice discussion on the 2022 draft annual report that you all have attached to your agenda. Hopefully you all have had a chance to look at that and review it. In our discussion in committee, we unanimously approved the draft with a few amendments. So if you all have the draft open, they're very minor, some grammatical stuff, splitting paragraph 1 into 2 paragraphs at in the past, splitting the third paragraph again into 2 at 3 vacancies. So again, just to help with readability, and it may help with layout as well. Where I would like us as a full council to kind of focus our attention, of course, opening it up to other comments that you folks may have, is the last paragraph. And so, you know, Ron, I think, Roy, rightfully so, wanted to highlight the environment more clearly in that last paragraph. And so the amendments that we're throwing around, and I'll just read it for you all with the amendments, because again, that's what we passed out of committee, is as the EAC transitions into 2023, it will continue to focus on its strategic planning efforts, creating guidance on HR Title 11, Chapter 200.1, supporting legislation that may impact the EAC and the environment, as well as exploring, hold on one second, as well as exploring recommendations that promote the enhancement and protection of Hawaii's environment. Let me know if you want me to read that one more time for you. Again, these are the this was the main amendment that we discussed and approved out of committee.
It was the enhancement and what of the environment?
And protection of Hawaii's environment. So from the top, as the EAC transitions into 2023, it will continue to focus on its strategic planning efforts, creating guidance on the HAR Title 11, Chapter 200.1, supporting legislation that may impact the EAC and the environment, as well as exploring recommendations that promote the enhancement and protection of Hawaii's environment.
So I'm generally okay with the edits. I'll go first unless anybody else wants to go. I don't necessarily agree with the last statement that says, you know, exploring recommendations that promote the enhancement and protection of Hawaii's environment alone. And, you know, I do want to remind folks because, and I think this is a problem with a lot of statutes and a lot of agencies, is that people think that we are only there to protect and enhance, right? And those are priorities. But if you also look at our enabling statute, part of what we do is, you know, and we're under OPSD, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So I do want to make sure that we keep in mind that we're here for balance, because I don't want there to be public that thinks we're only here to stop things from happening and full protection, full conservation, right? We do have to keep in mind that this board in particular, and the folks that were appointed to it, we're here because we recognize that there is a balance that needs to be done. We need to protect, we need to enhance the environment, but we also need to understand that in doing so, we do need some development, right, for the betterment of the community and everything that we're doing. So I don't want anything, and this is me personally, of course, you guys can all overrule me, right? This is a 14-person board, but any statements that we make, I just want to make sure that we are in line with our statutory objectives and that we're not, you know, asserting that we're only here for one side of the coin. So that would just be my recommendation, is I'm fine with that, but, you know, make sure to include additional language that holistically looks at really what we're doing.
Great comment. Thank you. Place and people.
What's the deadline for this for Mary Alice to include?
Working backwards, reverse engineering from our deadline, which is 20 days prior to the start of the 2023 session on January 18th. I think we're looking at December 29th for our submittal, which means incorporating this into our consolidated annual report would probably be, it would be nice to get it by December 1, but if the council wants to wait and act on a subsequent draft on it, are you having a December meeting?
Yes, we're looking at December 6th. So it'd be, yeah, a little, about 5 days later than the original deadline we set up December 1st. If OPSD is able to.
How about December 7th then?
December 7th. Yeah. Yeah, if OPSD is able to give us a few more days, I think that might be nice so folks can see the final version. And hopefully, the draft that we have in the agenda today gives you at least layout. I don't expect it to be much longer than this, right, Steph?
And my other question is to you, Onana, what words do you think are missing in that last sentence? Do you have any in mind right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we look at our statute, right, 343, 5.5, and I'm looking at this. The Environmental Advisory Council shall be assigned. Okay, wait, sorry, let me find the language I was looking for. Let me provide, if we are gonna be allowed a little bit extra time, let me go ahead and look at a couple of things. I pulled up the wrong statute, but the point was more so just, I want to make sure that we're putting out to the public what we were actually, what the statute tells us we're supposed to be doing, right? So let me think about some language, and if we do have time to put it before the council again, I think that would be really helpful. So thank you, Mary Alice, for that.
Chair, I'm going to have to leave the meeting to go to a 2:30 meeting, and my apologies. It's a standing committee meeting it's an all staff meeting. So thank you very much. And Les can let me know any other things that we need to act on for you or on your behalf.
Thank
Mary
you so
Alice, before you leave, Onana and I are going to talk later today about getting together with you for one of our strategic planning goals. Do we work with you directly for a calendar meeting, or is there someone on your staff we should talk to set up the meeting?
Me. Yeah, we're thinly staffed here.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
Thank you. Can I just ask one question on this?
Yep, go ahead.
So this says we filled 3 vacancies. We now have 14 members, but our website says that.
Sorry, Gordon, I couldn't hear you at the very end.
Our website says we have 15 members, and this one says we have 14.
Yeah, we actually only have 14 appointed right now.
Okay.
Oh, wait, okay.
We have
Counting
15
wrong.
names.
Yeah, you're right, we do. Well, okay, yeah. So technically we have 15 right now. Okay, we'll make the edit. Thank you. Nope, I couldn't count. I thought we had one more vacancy for some reason. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Jody. And then Roy. You're on mute, Jody.
I'm sorry, Chair, would you mind asking all the members to keep their cameras on? The Sunshine OIP office asked that all the members be seen and heard as much as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody, for that reminder. Okay, so Michelle, if you don't mind, and then I know Mary actually just had to step away for a second, so she'll be back shortly.
I'll put it on in 4 minutes, so sorry.
No problem. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Okay, Roy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think the sentence reads kind of pretty long, and maybe you can just simplify it and just say, and exploring recommendations for appropriate environmental protection. something like that. I thought maybe the word appropriate might be helpful. Or I don't know, or balanced, I don't know, some other word. But yeah, I can see what you're saying on honor. Oh,
I like balanced environmental
okay,
perspective.
that's
That could work. I don't know how others feel about it, and others may feel more strongly. Again, you guys can overrule me on this, but yeah, I just want to make sure we're having the holistic discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about that. I agree with you, Onana. And this is a little bit off topic, but it'll circle back. DLNR is just amending their rules for the conservation district. And a lot of us have serious concerns about the direction they're taking it. And Chris Ewan wrote a very thoughtful comment that said that the board must have the discretion to consider the benefits of a project as well as its impacts, and not simply reject projects because they have environmental impacts. Sometimes, I mean, it's always a balancing game. And we have competing goals in our state. And I don't think our job is to be partisan all the time for simply the most environmental thing one can do. I think we're supposed to be part of that balance. And you know, the statute and NEPA both talk about this. So, you know, I just basically saying I do agree with you.
Thanks, Ron. Anybody else?
I think it's going to depend on the words you use. I mean, I think balance is a great idea. Who could be against balance? But I think it's going to rest on the choice of words. So I would look forward to your editing, Onana. You're an excellent writer and sensitive to that whole issue. So we'll see.
Thanks, Robert. Any other questions, comments? Yeah. Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, I guess I agree with Ron. You know, as an engineer or wastewater engineer, we encounter this all the time where we want to protect the environment, and a lot of the laws are driven by environmental groups and all the lawsuits and all of that. And unfortunately, the engineers aren't good at communicating. I said this before, but we get drowned out by the environmental groups, and it's really tough. And I think balance is well, I like the word science-based, but that's my viewpoint. But balance and science-based, I would think, is a nice, well, for me. But anyway, I just think we need to consider everything from economics to I mean, it's nice to implement all these cost-aid treatment and things, but in the end, if it increases the sewer bills and more people become homeless, then it's not quite the balance I think that people had in mind. So we need to look at the bigger picture.
Thanks, Roy. You had your hand up. Oh, Steph, did you have your hand up?
No, I didn't. I was just coming back to this discussion. And so it sounded like we needed this. So I'm glad we were able to reaffirm it multiple times, that we strive for the benefit of both, again, place and people. So what I'd like to know, Onana, is how you want this to move forward. As a committee, we really worked hard to get this to the point where it was approved and in your all's lap today. So now that it might be a month more out, I want to get clarity on what that looks like, who's doing what, and what you all envision changing.
So to that, well, for schedule, now that Mary Alice is giving us till December 7th, our next meeting is scheduled for December 6th. So our agendas are due on November 3rd or November 29th. So whatever final form that we're going to propose to the council at the December 6th meeting, I'd like to see, we have to get to last by November 29th. Steph, if you, I think what I would propose is if you or the AR committee can go ahead, and you indicated you had some other cleanup edits that you folks were gonna make. If you can go ahead and make those and send that document to me, and then I can propose, edits along this discussion to kind of tweak really just that last paragraph that we're talking about here. And then we'll put that into, the final draft form for approval to the council at the December 6th meeting. Does that sound doable for folks? Yeah, and in the meantime, I did find the statute. If you guys can pull it up, it's 341-1. It's the findings and purpose, right? So just to kind of give context to this, the findings and purpose for the council, or for chapter 341, is the legislature finds that the quality of the environment is as important to the welfare of the people of Hawaii as is the economy of the state. The legislature further finds that the determination of an optimum balance between economic development and environmental quality deserves the most thoughtful consideration, and that the maintenance of the optimum quality of the environment deserves the most intensive care. So when I read this, I kind of read that balance in, right? We have competing or not necessarily competing interests, just interests that both need to be discussed, be considered. And as we're talking about this, I still like the edit that Roy proposed to that last sentence. So I think you said, Steph, supporting legislation that may impact the EAC, as well as exploring, balanced environmental protection and development. Maybe that's a way of saying it.
I would caution against balance. I think that's very much up for interpretation on the reader's part. But I know we're at 2:40, so I don't think us hashing it out right here is necessarily the best way to go. But just concur that it can be in the words. And I love that you just read the statute, Onana, because I think that's going to be kind of our holy grail to go back to, and really nail that last paragraph. So thank you for all the discussion, and the timeline that you laid out is doable. I can amend the draft and get it on your plate to really think through that last paragraph.
Okay.
And thanks, everyone. I have one final, and this was discussed in our last meeting. It really though speaks, I think, to the broader conversation that we're having just now about this particular annual report. And that's going back to our strategic planning and the direction we see the annual report moving forward. So I really just want to highlight and ask for all of our consideration on that front. Thank you.
Steph, that's a good point. And this is Michelle. And just to, hits on that new text that you've added there as well, the recommendations part. And I think that came up in our committee and how that ties in. If we're going to come up with recommendations in the annual report, how do we do that? And how does it tie in with the strategic planning?
So sorry, on this last point that you folks just raised, will you folks be reaching out to strategic planning more so? Is that a specific agenda item you want to add for December meeting to discuss further how?
So I'm not on the strategic planning committee, and perhaps maybe it would make sense for me to be on it, but because I'm not on the strategic planning committee, I don't know where the conversation stands. So really it's just a plug from the annual report committee to please include the annual report in the strategic planning committee's delving into direction and impact and purpose.
Thanks for clarifying that. All right. Well, thank you again to the annual report committee for all your hard work on that, and to everybody for the discussion we just had. I think that was really helpful. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the AR report before we move on? Okay. All right, thanks again, folks. So again, December 29th is, when any additional documentation. So basically our proposed final draft of the AR will get to less, so we can get that agendized, and Steph and I will work on some language. So we're deferring action on approving the annual report today. We will have an action item in December for that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Robin, you're up for the legislative committee update.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we met and it's a brief meeting. We talked about revising the conversation around requesting financial support from the legislature for the EAC. You'll remember we'd asked for $50,000 a couple of years back. It was a tough time to ask for any money. That may have eased a bit. And so there was a discussion in the committee that perhaps that would be one of the things we should explore with the ledge. There are two issues that we are thinking will become significant issues. We don't know if they'll be that way in 23 or wait till 24. Mahina has offered to speak to some of her colleagues about them. These two issues are ones we've talked about before: cultural impact assessments and social justice issues. We had talked about perhaps playing a role in convening some of the folks that are thinking about those rather than trying to do anything for this coming legislative session. Again, Mahina has volunteered to try and get a kind of a sense of where those conversations are and bring it back to us for the next meeting. We also talked about the last thing we did actually was we had a motion to authorize the EAC chair and EAC legislative committee chair to meet with the legislature's environmental committee chairs and appropriate gubernatorial staff. And let me explain a little bit about that. Clearly, we didn't want to say Rep. Lowen and Senator Gabbard. We don't know whether they will in fact be the chairs of those respective committees. There's also some discussion about talking with potential lieutenant governor, but obviously we don't know if she will be elected yet or not. And the reason for that was her acumen on the budget, as well as just in general talking to the governor's staff, thinking she would be the logical person, again, were it to be her and Green. So that's basically the highlight of our report. We did not come up with any recommendations for specific legislation. We thought mostly by talking to the two legislative committee chairs, we would try and find out what needs they saw that the EAC might help address, and then go from there.
So why don't we take the first agenda item, since we don't have any specific recommendations from the legislative committee to the council now. I want to open it up. It is an agenda item for discussion. If other council members maybe have suggestions for legislation that we want to either propose or just, watch. Nope. Anybody have anything other than what was mentioned by Robin? Okay.
I'm sure that Robin expressed this already, but we can't continue to do our work with no budget. And I think that it's embarrassing for our legislators to walk around saying how they care about the environment when they don't fund us, period.
Thanks, Mary. Roy, did you have something?
Yeah, actually, we talked a little bit about it during the strategic planning committee meeting, but maybe I'll wait for Ron. But I was thinking we should help support the Department of Environment concept like we did last year, because I think it kind of breaks down silos and kind of puts all the environmental functions together. I think that would be helpful. And we'll talk more about the carrying capacity in Ron's update.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, I think that's definitely a bill we'll keep an eye out as we've done in the past. Okay. Anybody else on the first bullet point? Okay. So the next item up then, it's, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion from someone to approve the legislative committee chair and the EAC chair to approach the environmental leadership, so that we can, discuss potential legislative changes and just understand what their legislative priorities are for the 2023 session.
So moved.
Thanks, Rachel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, okay. I heard Tessie. All right. All right, any further discussion on that? All right, well, I'll go ahead and call the question then. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand. All right, let's see, do we have everyone? Okay, Ron, are you? Oh yeah, all right, so it is unanimous with everybody on the call right now. Thank you, everybody. So Robin and I will report back, on that meeting once we get it set up. I'm just making some notes. All right, Robin, anything else from the legislative committee?
No, just that that we expanded the people they want us to talk to, and we would need, I think we'd be safe in talking to Gabbard, and Gabbard's running unopposed. I don't know if Lowen is or not, but I don't think we can speak with the governor's office until after the election anyway, which is next week, so.
Right. Okay, thanks, Robin. All right, anything else on that? All right, we got 45 minutes left and 2 more committees to, a couple more things to go through. So next up is, further discussion on the EAC policies and procedures. So you folks have in your packet a further revised version. So this is now version 3 of the EAC policies and procedures. And what I did on this was I accepted all of the changes that we had in version 2, version up to version 3. So the track changes that you see in this version are based on additional comments that were received either at the meeting, or I did have, Jody submitted some comments, and others submitted comments to me separately. So just, if there are any further edits, let's go ahead and start first with the EAC policies and procedures document before we move into the different committees. And then Jody, I think you had emailed me earlier, you wanted to make another change. Oh.
Well, mine was more just with regard to the addition of an orientation session for new members. It currently says that the chair shall agendize 1 or more orientation sessions for new members. And my suggestion was that it be the chair may, just because over time, as you have one new member and then another new member, you don't want to keep having these, the same orientation presentations. So that was my suggestion, substantially.
Thank you, Jody. Good suggestion. Makaala, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. And then nobody else has comments. Mahina, I was just gonna say, I know there was some stuff we wanted to pull from the old procedural rules. I would envision that those would actually go into this document. So I'm hoping that we can do that by the next meeting. Do you have any questions on that, or? No, okay. So again, I think we'll set a deadline for any final documents that are going to be part of the agenda need to be in by November 20, what did I say, November 28th? November, 1 second, sorry, November 29th. So if you can get me those, maybe the week before would be good. It gives me some time to kind of go through them and incorporate them. Is that doable? Okay, thank you. And then same goes for everybody else. As you folks are reviewing these, if you, after this meeting, you see additional edits, please try to get it into me the week before November 29th. So that's November 22nd. And then I can start incorporating that so we can hopefully finalize this document before the end of the year. Okay, so, and then on the policy, let's see, I think I had to make, let's see, there are a couple of edits. No, I think we're good on the INO. Check the procedures for forms. I think that one is done. There were no further edits on that. I'm just taking a look. Oh, there were a couple on page 3, there's some track changes. On page 2, they're like really minor stuff, adding commas, a couple of typos. So I know this was previously approved, but these are kind of just cleanup edits. I hope everybody is okay with that. Let me know if not. On the exemptions committee procedures, Ron, I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at those. Again, those are kind of more cleanup edits that were suggested by our AG. So if you have any issues with that, let me know.
I'm fine with all of those.
Okay, great. Okay, anybody else? Oh, Steph, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Onona. Just in looking at the annual report, there's a lot of strong language around deadlines. And I understand the need for that, but also if this is in part to reflect practice, I wonder if, you know, in following Jody's comment regarding orientation meetings, if there's some softening of language that we want to use around these dates, particularly given, for instance, like, you know, where we're at today.
Yeah, I mean, I think previously OPSD had said that they, you know, December 10th really is, or December 1st is when they'd ideally want it. We're getting an extension this year, but I understand about the, you know,
I'm fine either way, honestly. It's a practice thing, and also consistency. So bring it up for perhaps your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm worried about making it too fluffy because we have a history of being late. So, but I understand, and I guess maybe this is a question to our AGs, you know, for language that we have in here, again, these are policies and procedures, right? If we miss a deadline, I mean, are we at risk of a penalty of some kind? I would hope not, that we have, you know, the flexibility, right? As we're doing with, you know, we need a little bit more time to work on our annual report. We're not going to get it in by December 1st of this year. Are we at risk because we're going to policies and procedures?
I guess if the concern is like getting sued for it or something, I don't see very much exposure there. If it's policies and procedures, they're aspirational, I guess, but I mean, it is. I don't see any downside to. I understand why you don't want to soften it. Also.
Yeah, I mean, I can say like we will aim to get it in by this time if that softens it, you know, instead of say shall be due.
Or
yeah, I'm just seeing the
unless we
shall
have
and the no laters and that stuff. So,
or a parent or, you know, comma at the end of that first sentence, and then, you know, unless we've, you know, not gotten permission from OPSD, but unless we've coordinated with, you know, some phrase at the end that says it should be this date unless we've coordinated with OPSD for a later date. But that might be wordy and not helpful.
You can add something in.
no, I think that's helpful, right? I mean, part of this is offering practice also to folks.
Yeah,
and that would say it's going to be late, but it's late and we're coordinating with them. So, you know, they know when it's coming, you know, like this year, like you're saying, Steph.
Mm-hmm. Okay, or any, yeah. Okay, I'll
Listen, were you going to say something? I really should defer to you. I apologize. So
I mean,
it's
no,
up to
I mean,
you.
technically I don't start until the 7th, but so you're still the main attorney here. No, I was just gonna say, I'm not familiar with the rules or statutes yet regarding EAC, but to the extent that this is not required by your rules or statutes, then I would think there would be no real consequences if you don't meet exactly what's in the procedures. That's all I was going to say.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, yes, aspirational.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, I appreciate Steph and Michelle, what you offered. So I will soften it. I drafted these kind of hard because I just want us to stay on task, but I'll put in some flexibility for us. Point well taken. Okay.
I like the hard ass approach. We had such a hassle with this before. And Steph, you've really turned it around. I don't have any problem with having it exactly the way it is right now.
Yeah.
And Steph, if you get arrested for malfeasance, I will bail you out, I promise.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, what was interesting is that at our AR meeting this morning, we had KITV News attend, and they didn't say anything, but that just brought to mind. I was wondering who has authority to talk on behalf of or speak on behalf of the council. Are there any guidelines? We haven't had that problem in the past, but I'll say, could come up.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to raise. Thank you for that. Technically, nobody does unless we approve the councils to do it. So if you folks even recall for the legislative session, so right now today, what we just approved is Robin and I going to approach legislators prior to session starting. So probably at our next meeting, we'll have an action item to approve who gets to give testimony on behalf of the council, right? So we vote as a council even on whether or not we're going to give testimony. So to the extent you're speaking to the press, I mean, I think that should be coordinated, and that's something we can add as an agenda item.
Yeah, what's spooky is that when they attend, like we had the public radio folks attend our information outreach meeting when we talked about cesspools, and they just, whatever we say, they write in their article, and it's kind of spooky. But I don't know what to do. We walked in and they had all the mics set up and they're recording it and everything.
Yeah. Well, as a general rule of thumb, well, they're welcome to be at public meetings, right? I mean,
yeah. So whatever we say is a public statement, and that's what they take it as. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're doing bad journalism and they're saying the council did this when it wasn't a council action, that's on them. But I think for ourselves, we have to be, when you're expressing an opinion, if it's not something that we as a council voted on to provide an opinion on, we can't say that the council believes X, Y, and Z, right? You have to, that would be you in your personal capacity.
Right.
I think in those cases, I mean, if something comes up, it's best to maybe direct it to me first.
Yeah. So I thought it might be a good policy, things that you might want to add. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually a good point. Let me agendize this because maybe, and actually if somebody else wants to be the media point of contact, I'm fine with that. I don't particularly want to speak to the media. I've gotten used to going to the ledge and providing testimony after being sacrificed to do so over the last several years. So, but of course, if anybody else wants to do it, by all means.
I think it's gotta be you, Onana. A, you're an excellent testifier. I watched you do that. And B, you're the leader of it. So it should come from you.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Robin.
And C, she's an attorney.
Right.
Well, in regards to today, they did not come, KITV did not come off of mute. They didn't come off of video when they were asked if they had any questions or feedback. There was no response. So just some context on that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's interesting that they attended the annual report committee meeting. Well, since we're on the topic, I mean, discussion of policies and procedures is up. I mean, what do you folks think about what kind of procedures we should have should the media approach a member? Because, whatever you folks suggest, I can draft in for the next version so that we can review that.
Yeah, I would suggest that you be that the chair be the singular spokesperson for media requests for information on the council or anything like that. I know if I was asked something, if they came to a meeting here, I would say, well, you really should speak to Onana. She's our chair.
Okay. So why don't I drop something in? All media inquiries shall be directed to the chair or the designated media contact. That gives us flexibility to vote somebody else in if somebody really wants to do it.
Right. I mean, if you then turned it around and said, you can speak to Robin about the strategic plan, then that's fine. But otherwise it would go to you.
Yeah, the chair or the chair's designee.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
So just keep in mind, you know, media always wants an answer today and like last minute. So maybe there's some, I don't know why they would be coming to the meetings, but we probably should have something where if they wanted a response and Onana is unavailable, you know, there's a secondary person. I'm not saying me, but you know, DBED has a PIO officer. And so I think that you should ask Mary Alice Evans who that person is. So you can coordinate in case there's a, because we're still ancillary to Office of Planning and Sustainability.
That's a good point.
Okay, I found this on the web for
Oh, okay, thanks, Don.
That was my Siri. I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Okay, she likes to jump in when she's not invited. No, I think that's a good point of directing it to OPSD, and you know, we might have to handle it on a case-by-case basis. And since we have everybody, I mean, this is a good point, right? Again, just to remind everybody that unfortunately, you know, if the media is like, we need comment by tomorrow, because we are a sunshine board, we can't act, right? You know, typically on a tomorrow situation. So yeah, I think, you know, informing me and we can decide if it's something benign and just, you know, responding to a factual question, that might be something we can respond to. But if it, you know, is something that requires the opinion of the council and a vote of the council, you know, we're not going to be able to do that, you know, in a day's time. It would have to wait for a sunshine meeting. So yeah, I'll draft some procedures, you know, along those lines, and then we can review that at the next meeting. Anything else that you folks think we're missing out? And that was a really good catch, Roy. That's a big one. Hopefully we can kind of capture everything to get a good draft, to at least get our first, you know, our first version approved of our policies and procedures. And you know, again, this will be a dynamic document that, you know, can be edited more easily as we're seeing versus rules, right? So, okay. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. If there are, again, please text me, or not text me, excuse me, please email me any additional edits you have to any of the documents by November 29th, and I'll go ahead and work those into the next versions. Let's see, we have a couple of things left, so I'm gonna stop there unless anybody has further comments, and hand it over to Robin so that there's still time to talk about strategic planning and our last one.
Yeah, I'll try and do this quickly. What we did basically was go through, there were two parts to the meeting. Part one was to go through the 4 priorities we'd established in our strategic planning for we collectively, the EAC, and to get an update on where we stand on those. And the first one was what was the unfinished business, and Ron was kind enough to bring us up to speed on the PIG, having met earlier and having another meeting coming up Friday. And that is, he's anticipating a December report from the PIG on the exemption process. So that's great. And the second part was that the policies and procedures, which we talked about in our strategic planning forum, is, as you just heard, moving along. And on today's agenda, we talked about it. So priority number 1, we collectively, the EAC, is addressing successfully. Question number 2, priority number 2 is integration with the OPSD. And I'll swallow the sword, or what's the word? I was remiss. It's been a crazy last 2 weeks for me. I apologize, but I'm going to talk with Onana after this meeting, and we will set up something with Mary Alice to have that conversation with around the issue of how can we be more helpful to OPSD and vice versa. What are the roles we see each other playing? How can we integrate some more? For example, that PIO conversation would be an interesting one. So After Onana and I talk about calendar, we'll set up a meeting with Mary Alice and move forward on number 2. Number 3 issue was to work on the elevator speech based on the need to communicate what we are. And obviously we've had a good discussion about that. I think the last piece of that is, and I referenced this in our earlier conversation, to figure out what do we do with it? We will have worked so hard on crafting it. And besides for Mary Alice putting it in a transition book, we need to figure out a better way to get it out to our constituents who totally grossly misunderstood our role. And so we just need to think about that. Maybe that's a strategic planning conversation, or maybe we set aside, a good 15 minutes at the next full agenda. And in fact, maybe Onana, we might want to agendize that in terms of how do we use that elevator speech, which will have been revised clearly by then. And then the last one we had the most discussion on, which was this carrying capacity idea. And we've talked about this. What role do we play, and how can the EAC be involved in this, and what is carrying capacity? And it was a really good discussion. We began by recognizing the limitations we have: no staff, no money, no budget. How do we, as an agency of volunteers who meet once a month, initiate a carrying capacity conversation for the state? And we talked a lot about, what does that mean? What is carrying capacity? We're not talking about it just for tourism. We're talking about it for issues like energy and issues like watershed and issues like water usage and so forth. I mean, it's a huge conversation in a huge state with incredibly varied communities. Carrying capacity, as Rachel pointed out, for the deer on Lanai is totally different than a conversation about carrying capacity in any other community. So we need to be very careful about that. And so one of the suggestions from the committee was to have a conversation with some of the leadership of key agencies like DLNR, OPSD, some of the county planning departments, on their receptivity to a carrying capacity conversation. What are they interested in it? Would it be something they would want to put some time and resources to? Could we then play some role in helping to have that conversation statewide? What's the role, sorry, Mary, does INO play in having a carrying capacity conversation? And again, what does that mean? And I know we'll have some good conversation about that in a minute. And then we moved on to part 2 of our conversation, which was, what do we hope to accomplish over the next 12 months, actually 14 months, but, and those came out to be 4 points. Having our role more clearly defined and finding out what needs the legislative leadership might see served by the EAC. As Roy said, a second one was to encourage and support the Department of Environment, pending a conversation with the legislators who introduced that bill last year, to see if that's still a priority of theirs. Talking with state agency leaders about a carrying capacity conversation. And then 2 that were remaining were looking at recruiting that long sought quote cultural practitioner for the EAC membership, and then transition planning, which I saw that Onana was kind enough to include into the policies and procedures. And then Steph raised one that we've left out by omission, not purposely, and that is to discuss the annual report and its situation. So that was the 3-minute review of what the Strategic Planning Committee talked about today. Sorry to make it so fast, but we're running out of time. Questions, comments, issues, concerns? Anybody on the committee? Did I leave out anything of critical importance?
I popped a question in the chat.
I was going to say I could answer or try to answer Steph's question, which was, are we discussing carrying capacity of what? Residents, populations, tourist invasive species? I think we were talking about carrying capacity of the islands for people, but that's actually kind of what we talked about, is that carrying capacity depends on even carrying capacity of people. It's like, well, how do you want to define that? It not only depends on what your inputs are, you might come up with a different answer, but your goals for carrying capacity are going to depend on how you define all the different variables. Like, do you care differently about different numbers? Are you trying to maximize tourists? Are you trying to maximize residents? Are you trying to maximize health of humans, value, like economic, like there's a lot of things going on when you start. People like using carrying capacity. It's a very easy term, but defining what different people mean by it is usually very, very hard to do.
And it's exactly the same discussion that communities around Hawaii have every single day about the fishing regulations. That it's statewide, average, Does it have anything to do with your place? No. So my suggestion when we do this kind of thinking, and I like this kind of stuff, is that we do it site specific, place based. Because when we talk about trying to do a carrying capacity for a variety of places, we're going to get a variety of priorities. So to me, it might be foreign to this group, but it's how we roll around here, is doing things place-based, place-specific. So it might be some guidance for specific places to use.
And I was in that discussion as well. And that's why I think our goal over the next 14 months, as Robin put it, should be really to discuss it with a number of people, a number of groups and agencies. This is a long-term type of plan. We don't have to do it next month or even next year. But let's find out what, if there's interest and what people are interested in, the scale, the resources, how they want to balance things. To me, the overarching question in carrying capacity, and it's not the exclusive one, is our visitor industry. Our visitor industry is the primary economic engine. And despite trying to diversify, we're getting less and less diverse every year. And it's also the issue that most residents of the islands are most concerned about. If you ask them what is growing that there might be too much of, I think they're going to say tourists. We're coming up against a capacity here, and on the other hand, it provides our income for our state. We need to balance those things, but we're hitting a tipping point, I think. If you've been to Barcelona or Venice or certain places like that, you can see they're over the tipping point, and violence is occurring because of it. And I don't see that we're that far away from it. Some of what happened in the early days of the pandemic, especially on Maui, I think that's a signal for what's going to come. And we need to have this discussion, but I want to share it with county planning directors, DLNR, those folks, and see, is there interest in it? So if there's not, we can't lead it. We're not going to lead it, but I think it's our duty to bring it up.
I think that I absolutely agree, Ron. I think you could not have said that better. One of the things that the committee talked about was just that, making recommendations for appropriate agencies to have this conversation if they were interested in it, and if not, to try and help them get interested in it. It's something I thought we would raise when Onauna and I meet with Lowen and Gabbard, just to judge their interest in this. What are they, from the legislative perspective, do they think this is something that should be happening, or are they interested in participating? The other thing is, we talked about this the other time, last meeting, what are good examples of carrying capacity studies that might be relevant for our state to look at? And is there anybody that, that's aware of that? Are people at UH doing this now? I don't know if you saw the lead article in the Star Advertiser this morning about geolocations that HCA is doing. If you haven't, you should take a look at it.
And so Maui Tomorrow did a carrying capacity for West Maui And, you know, carrying capacity, again, you know, if you go back to Rachel, it's basically saying, what are your benchmarks and what are your guidelines and what's your baseline? What do you want to see? So, you know, I can say from doing community outreach and the West Maui plan, you know, tourism, like we were doing all county type rules for our plan, but we really didn't look at the state plans and how they interacted in the county plans. But I believe that in our conversation in those meetings, you know, Maui Tomorrow did say, hey, we did a carrying capacity. Why aren't you looking at that? So I know that there are plans out there. I would like to see more carrying capacity plans, period, you know, because I do see, maybe not on all islands, but on Maui for sure, there's a lot more tourists. And I'll also bring up the general plan of Maui. You know, it says for the enjoyment of the residents, the ratio should be 3 residents to 1 tourist. So I don't know what the other general plans say, but that's what our general plan says. And we're actually probably like 7 tourists to 1 resident, if not more. So
The issue I think is, as Ron said, what role do we play? That's the strategic planning conversation. Not is carrying capacity studies needed, but what role do we play in this conversation? Who do we talk to? Why will anybody listen to us? So I think that's what we have to grapple with first.
So I think the key is to get to the new governor and have him, you know, spearhead it, and that would be ideal, you know, in my mind.
My sense is that the fantastic arm of this potential carrying capacity conversation or focus is because it's scanning the horizon. And that's a great pillar within any strategic planning. And so it's looking ahead. And we're hearing this given our broad breadth of expertise and where we live and come from. We're hearing this from communities on the ground. It's been in the news. I think it would also be really helpful, and I'm speaking certainly for myself in this regard, is to make sure we're educated on it. What are we exactly talking about? What studies have been done? What are people working on? So this really brings to mind the green fee, which is fantastic legislation that's got a real chance this upcoming session that hopefully we're going to be behind. But there's huge components within that. And if you look at the 2 you know, potential governors that we may have, they're quite different in how they view those things. So just broad suggestion, a lot more discussion, but to educate, get clarity, keep talking to our communities and make sure we're partnering. Because, you know, our legislators are hearing this from a bunch of different people, and that's been a criticism that we in the environmental field have heard for many, many years. Who's doing what? Why can't you guys just have one single message and come to us? So let's make sure we're being good partners in that regard. And thank you.
And from a EA and EIS perspective, you know, it's an interesting point, Don, what you were saying about the general plan, because we don't tend to tie in, I think, in our impact analysis issues with carrying capacity. I don't think many EAs or EISs tackle that. And it's something that, you know, if we looked in our general plans or had more guidance or had more widely accepted or publicized studies, it's something that, you know, the public could demand, you know, in the impact analysis, if not direct impacts, then indirect or cumulative.
All right, any other thoughts? This is a really great discussion, and thanks to the Strategic Planning Committee and everybody on the council. I mean, again, this was a very good discussion.
Sorry for the headphones. My neighbor's kids are on the trampoline. I can't hear anything anybody else is saying. Rachel knows, she's on the other side of them.
No problem. Well, yeah, Robin, I guess, is there anything else you wanted to share from the Strategic Planning Committee?
No, it was a great discussion, and I'm glad to hear what you all have to say, and we'll keep going on it. there's no action recommendation quite yet. I think we still need to keep talking.
Great, thank you. All right, so our last agenda item for today is, I know at the last meeting, folks had some questions on what were the outstanding terms for folks, and we actually do have 4 people that are up in 2023. It's Ron, Gordon, Makaala, and Don. So depending on, I don't know what everybody's tally is in terms of years. I mean, I think we'll work with the new administration to get all of you folks reappointed for as long as you can for your next terms. And that, typically the governor's messages, I think, come out in February, early March. So, we'll work to go ahead and submit testimony in support of those appointments. Any questions on that? Okay. And the last thing was, I sent the updated committee assignment.
I'm sorry, Onana, but Ron's term limited, right? We can't have Ron come back.
I'm not 100% sure. I don't have that information. So yeah, maybe Ron.
Makaala's got 2 years and Don's got 6, if I'm doing my math right.
Okay.
And the other question is, we have a vacancy now, right? And
not officially, but we will. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. to be discussed in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
But Ron, I don't know. Have you been on for 8 years total, or did you? I don't know.
I think it's been 7, but I'll have to go check that.
Okay.
I thought it was 25.
Well, yeah, let me know. And then I guess, Gordon, you just got on for a 1-year term. So we need to get, I think they're staggering us, right? So Gordon's got a lot more time. Well, yeah, let me know, Ron, and, I'll check with whoever the new boards and commission is too, and we'll work again to getting our folks reappointed. So
okay, so let's say if I were, if it was 7, then I could get a 1-year term. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me check.
Okay, thank you. So again, going back to your committee cards, I think everything's updated, but if anybody wants to move around, let me know. The meeting times, of course, were, our general meeting times. Right now, we're in those months where both annual report committee and strategic planning do need to meet. So I think nearly every committee met today except for rules. Excuse me. So we did have to, jigger times and do some shorter meetings. I think we're probably going to have to do that again for December, if folks can bear with us. I think, Ron, today in exemptions, you mentioned probably no exemption committee meeting in December. So we can use that time slot. Mahina, do you think you'll have rules in December?
Yeah, we'll have rules in December.
Okay. And then annual report, we'll have strategic planning. Yes. Okay, and legislative committee as well, and INO. Okay, so we'll probably do something. Is there any committee who doesn't? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I'm sorry, Dawn, that reminded me. INO wants to set up a schedule of meetings between meetings. So Jody, we have to sunshine those, right?
Yes.
And even if it's just 2 of us doing it.
No, 2 is fine.
Okay.
Well,
I think we wanted to.
Not quorum though. You don't have quorum for the committee.
Because when we're planning the forum, sometimes there's like nitty-gritty stuff that we need to do. And, so
I'll defer to Jody on that.
So we'll submit a schedule at the December meeting to be approved of INO meetings prior to our workshop, our forums for December and January. December for the January and then January for the February. And then we're going to skip March and April because it'll be the end of the legislative session and we probably don't want to be bothered. So, okay. Sorry, I just had a thought out loud. Thank you.
No worries. Well, I just wanted to get a gauge for how much time committees need, because again, so what we'll do, push the full EAC meeting back in December to 1:30 like we did today to allow for time. Are there any committees that are okay with just 45 minutes for a meeting? I know you're okay with 45 minutes.
We only used 30 minutes today.
Okay. All right, I'll put you down as 30 to 45. I think I might need one more committee if you can do without a full hour.
We didn't use our full time today, but I'm assuming if, depending on whether or not we've met with anybody by the time, we might need to.
For both strategic planning and INO, and legislative, excuse me.
I think we'd be safe with 45 for ledge like we had today. That was plenty of time. Strategic planning, as you can see from the conversation we just had a few minutes ago, probably the hour would be better.
Probably an hour for that. Okay, and then yeah, ANR, I'll give you a full hour to finish.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need that. And I didn't realize annual report was at 8 a.m. That's pretty tough for me with getting the kids to school.
Okay. Is
So
there?
I don't know if there's swapping that can be had.
I'm okay with an earlier meeting if the rest of my group is for the legislative committee.
So INO can go earlier too, can't we? Yeah.
Okay.
I'd almost rather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know Mary Mahina's 8 a.m. okay for you? Or is that tough for you?
That works for me.
Okay. So maybe I'll do INO at 8 a.m. And then Steph, are you okay at, so INO would be 8 to 8:45. Would AR be okay 8:45 or is that still too early?
No, 8:45 would be fine.
Okay. Okay, and we'll work from there. All right, well, thank you so much, folks. Are there any further announcements?
Just wondering about the January meeting. Are we going to stick with the first Tuesday? That's the 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, unless folks are okay, I mean, if there's a want to move that, we can try the second Tuesday, but I thought second Tuesdays were hard for some folks.
We're gonna have the forum on the second Wednesday.
Okay. Ron, is January 3rd tough for you?
I won't be around, but you know, if it's harder for other people, then I'll just skip it. I could try to make it from wherever I am, but you know, like it's just sometimes hard. Driving, it's hard to do driving cross country.
So is anybody not available on January 10th? If we could move, I mean, is that too hard for INO or is that helpful to have it the day before your forum?
It's okay. I just didn't know what it did to staff and whatnot because it's a 2-day commitment in a row like that. That's all.
Yeah, I see.
I just thought I should bring it up, but
No,
not a deal stopper for me.
Okay. Didn't somebody have something standing on the second Tuesday? Because I thought when we.
That was the previous attorney.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, if everybody's okay with January 10th, we can accommodate that. Les, do you see any issue with moving the January 10th meeting? I mean, the January 3rd moving to January 10th just for that month?
Just for that month, I don't see any problem. I just have to let the LUC know because we have to give them the schedule for the year, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Because their meetings are usually what, Wednesday, Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if anybody else was going to be having a holiday travel. Maybe I'm the only one. You know, I shouldn't be hungover on the 3rd, but it just may not be.
Nobody loves the rest of us, Ron, only you.
Like I said, I'm not opposed as long as it works for other schedules. So, you know, and then at January meeting, I mean, you know, typically at the end of the year, we do have this discussion. Are we keeping first Tuesdays of the month? You know, so that seems to work for people, but we do have the flexibility to move it. And in most election years, we used to move it to the second Tuesday, second Tuesday, or we would move the November meeting because of the election. So that that's fine. I mean, it sounds like everybody's okay with January 10th, so, we can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so next meeting, December 6th, the following meeting's January 10th. We'll have further discussions then. Any edits on anything that we discussed today, do November 29th. And thank you all very much. And, have a happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you folks in December.
All right.
Great. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.